Yeah, cool. Okay, so we're going to get started. We are having some projection issues. My Mac is not playing kindly with the projection hardware. So we're going to go projector list, which is okay because we're talking about something abstract, which is empathy and collaboration. It really should require a lot of visuals. So I'll be using the slides for personal reference for this, but other than that, we're just going to go ahead and get started. And to start, I do need to say that I have a couple of disclaimers. First, for my dad, because we're streaming, if I use colorful language, Dad, I'm sorry. We'll deal with that in another conversation. And the same goes for my son, who is 7, who will hear this and ask lots of questions. When I started to sit down and think through how I wanted to talk about empathy and collaboration with a group of information architects, it freaked me out a little bit because I started to understand this idea that I'm going to put together a presentation that has to have a coherent narrative all the way through it and deliver it to people who are passionate about organization and coherence. So bear with me if some things feel a little bit disconnected here. So we'll start with just who am I. My name is Oldaker. Right now I'm the lead UX designer of Westfield Insurance. And when I'm not doing that in the evenings, I also freelance with an organization called Top Hat, doing UX consulting work and design. But my career started back in 2001, fresh out of college. I was a PR major at Mullen College down in Canton, Ohio, and wanted to go into advertising. Like I really wanted to build a career out of heading to Madison Avenue. I thought I was going to do all of the big, sexy client work, the Nikes of the world, the Apples of the world. That was the path that I thought I was going to go down. And so I started that with an internship here at a local ad agency in Canton. Things were going great. I was making coffee and file and paper, and then September 11th happened. And for a lot of us in the ad world at the time, the bottom line got cut almost immediately. I mean, they knew people were going to stop spending money, and so many of us were out of work at the time. So packed my bags up, went home to stay with Mom and Dad, and Dad wasn't just going to pay for the bills for me to sit there and sort of figure out who I was or figure out my life goal or do vision boards or whatever it was I was going to do at the time. So he said, hey, come to work for me in our insurance agency. So we have a family-owned insurance agency that my grandfather started back in 1960, passed down to my father after that. I think he was pretty psyched about the idea of handing it off to my brother and I. My brother and I had other options in mind. So I eventually went to work for him in the insurance agency, taking phone calls during the day, making quotes, filing claims for customers, and in the evenings doing what you do as an insurance agent, which is sitting down with people at their dinner tables, trying to, suffer them through reading over homeowners' quotes or, talking about the auto thing that they had and convincing them that they shouldn't let their kids drive because it's just too expensive. But that didn't really align with what I wanted to do in my life or what I thought I was there to do anyway. And I would sit there during the day, the judgmental face on this 22-year-old kid, first generation, fresh out of college, telling my dad, this is how you need to run the business. I have all of the answers. I know what you should do, and I know what you should stop doing. And that didn't always go over well. So I would get bored very quickly with all the insurance work, and I would start to just fiddle around with web development and web design. And so started to do some self-teaching in that space. Found out that some of my friends were leaving their jobs as web developers to start their own sort of boutique web shop, doing web design and web development. And I didn't have a lot to contribute at that point because I didn't have a lot of formal training in that background. But I could hit the streets for them and start to sell their services. So this was really my first step into client services work and putting products and services out there and helping the buyers of those products and services learn how to implement them to further their business along. That evolved very quickly into a career in software as a service startups. So I fell in love with the whole web and tech thing in general. But doing websites as a service didn't feel like it was enough for me at that point. Made some friends in the startup space and decided to go down that path. And that was a fun journey, and it's one that I've loved for a better part of 15 years. Serving all kinds of industries from B2B, B2C, entertainment industry stuff, healthcare stuff, banking stuff. You name it, I've probably had my hands in it. But the whole time, whether it was working with my dad or working with the startups or with the small web shops, I've always avoided as much as possible large enterprise. Just avoided it like the plague. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be a part of a big organization. And I knew coming out of my family's business that I'm pretty sure I didn't want to have anything to do with insurance. And 15 years later, and I'm at an enterprise insurance company. The universe has a sixth sense. And so along the way, I've been able to not only do the freelancing gigs and also work in my startups and have to hire vendors there from time to time. But even now in the enterprise space, I'm getting a unique perspective on how enterprises build relationships with vendors. They partner with them in order to try to get things done that they can't do on their own. And through that, I've been able to make some interesting observations on both sides, both things that I've learned the hard way in the past and things that I've done. Sidebar real quick. I was doing some freelancing work for a company called Site Logic Marketing in Canton. And one of our big clients was the Eaton Corporation. And this was really early in my career, particularly in doing usability testing and some IA work. And we go to Pittsburgh one day, we have this big, long, full-day workshop, and I'm up there just, giving all the good UX language and work in this workshop to all of these people. I feel like I'm really connecting with them, and I'm like, man, I'm the expert in the room. At the end of the day, a guy named Ben Woods walks up to me, and he's like, hey, I'm Ben. I do UX here at Eaton. I'm like, oh, okay, so there are other people here who know what I know, which was like a big moment for me to understand that it's easy to get to a place where you feel like you are the sole genesis of truth in a room, or you have sole ownership of an idea or sole ownership of a process, only to find out that there are others around you who can participate in that with you if you just open yourself up to them. So that's sort of a sidebar, but it's relevant to what we're doing, and I see that sitting back, and I just had to mention that because it was really funny for me.
Do you remember that meeting?
Absolutely.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, crystal clear. Yeah, I mean, it was crazy because I felt like I was the guy. I was being positioned up there as this expert, this 28-year-old guy who's, kind of relatively new to the industry. And these people from Eaton are just like eating this stuff up. And lo and behold, they have an expert on their team who probably had a lot more experience than I did at the time. So for me, it's always been interesting. And first, so today in talking about sort of that vendor-client relationship and what empathy means in that space to work together, one of the things I want to do first is talk about the vendors. Anybody in here a vendor of services for organizations? Yeah? So we have a couple? Okay. So vendors, this is the shit that we say about you when you're not looking. Okay? We say things like, yeah, they're overpriced. We should probably start an agency of our own and charge what they're charging because we probably double our salaries. Now walking in to save the day because they're going to get all the glory for all the work that's being done when really I've been trying to push this thing through for the last 18 months. We can clearly do the work that they're doing, but they're getting asked to do it. And one of my favorites, these guys are going to go beyond scope. They've been asked to do this very specific, very simple thing, but they're talking about an 18-month roadmap to take us to where we need to get to. So that's what vendors, that's what we say about you when you're not looking. Now vendors, this is what you need to hear coming out of that. The first is, try to understand why you're actually being brought in. And this may have nothing to do with the mission on your website or the writing on your walls in fluorescent colors in your agencies. There are usually very real reasons that organizations need your help, and it may not match exactly with sort of the mission and vision for your agency. Ask lots of questions and keep asking, even if people are being obstinate jerks and not giving you the information that you think that you need. And finally, your menu of deliverables and services is practically a sushi menu to a butcher in the Midwest sometimes. Like, get down to focusing on talking about how you can help solve problems, real business problems, and let go of the customer journey maps, and let go of the tree testing, and really talk to your business partners about how you can serve them in the walls that you can break down for them. We're going to flip it on its back now. We're going to talk to people who are clients. So how many people hire vendors in here to do work with them? Okay, here's some shit that we say about you, clients on the vendor side. You guys are a mess. You're a complete mess. There's no real vision or coherent sense of what you're actually trying to accomplish. Somebody somewhere higher up read a book, caught like a key phrase in the book, they're bought into this idea, came running down the middle management and said, hey, we need to do this thing because I think it's what we need to do, and customer experience and UX and usability and all this stuff. So that gets said a lot. You're focusing on the wrong things. You guys think you need to do this when you're blind to what's actually happening, and you need to do these things over here in order to even think about doing these things over here. And then finally, well, when all is said and done, vendors will get in your room and say, well, if that's what they say they want, that's what we'll deliver. Right? Like that's a pretty common thing that happens in this space. And clients, what you need to hear is you probably need more help than you think. There's probably more work to be done than you realize, and you can't do it all alone. And the vendor is not here to make you look bad. Like, sure, the vendor wants to benefit from the business partnership. They want to make money. That's part of what everybody does. But their goal isn't to come in and make anybody look bad. Their goal isn't to come in and be the savior. Their goal is to come in and literally help you accomplish the things you're trying to accomplish. And finally, for clients, be transparent. Like, share everything that you can. I know it's probably a pain in the ass to try to get someone up to speed and to onboard someone to a project that's already been going on for 18 to 24 months and to give them the backstory. But in the end, like, if you can share all of those documents and share all of those stories, all of a sudden you have someone who's now walking with you and beside you and can start to feel the pain that you've already been feeling throughout the process. And that's only going to make for your working relationship to be a lot better. And so whenever we get vendors and clients together in the same room trying to actually do something, it can get really messy because we come pre-programmed with some of these ideas and defensiveness that sort of has been built up over time around past relationships. And there's a couple of things that we can do to make it work. So first, when we're thinking about empathy and we're thinking about sort of the mental space we need to get into in order to be able to take on the feelings of another person, one of the things that has worked for me is trying to operate out of a space of gratefulness or gratitude. I was told a long time ago that you can't be in the same mental space of anger and gratitude at the same time. Only one of those can operate at any given time. So if you are feeling grateful and you can find ways to focus on gratitude, whether it's for your job, for your family, for your friends around you, or even just other humans who are partnering with you to tackle the thing that you're tackling, that will automatically pull down any defensive nature that you have. It will pull down any anger that you have or frustration that you have about the project and put you into a different mental space that will maybe help build a better cohesiveness on your team. The second thing is vulnerability, and this one is tough. Because it means telling people who you really are. And sometimes that will mean saying you don't know things or you don't understand terms and being okay with that. And it can be really scary to be vulnerable in front of people, but the funny thing about that is it will actually create confidence in you because now you're just dealing with the truth and not a false sense of self. So if you can work on vulnerability, I think that that's going to help you a ton in those spaces. And this goes for both clients and vendors. And two things that come to mind for me that I tend to tell myself in those times, whenever I'm feeling deficient in a conversation, or whenever I feel like I may be prejudging somebody else. Well, one phrase that I say to myself regularly is that I am a super interesting person. And I bet you are too. And we get back to humanizing the people in the process and not just seeing vendors as a resource to be consumed and then spit out when we're done. And we don't see clients just as someone who is a train wreck of problems that we're just here to help put Band-Aids on. It helps, bring us together and defocus sort of de-emphasize the stress of the project and remember that we're all humans in a room together and we're trying to work together. The second thing when it comes to vulnerability for me that I would say to myself is that I have something to offer and I also have something to learn. And for me personally, that helps level set my own value to the project and my value to the team. But it also helps me to remember that there are other professionals likely in the room, like Ben was 10 years ago whenever we were working at Eaton, who also have things to offer. And I don't always have to be the know-it-all superhero guy who's here to rescue the project. Like, everybody has something to contribute no matter what. And the next step would be becoming a non-reactive presence. And my Westfield teammates over here are probably going to laugh at that one because they know if I am anything, it is not non-reactive. I tend to be a fireball in a room. I get excited super easily. But it's something that I'm working on. And whenever I'm doing it well, I feel like I've seen the fruits of that. When I can step into a situation and not hear, that we're not doing something for accessibility effort, but it's a part of the overall goal to hit AA compliance. I don't have to mentally lose my mind. That train wrecks the rest of the group, okay? And so working on being a non-reactive presence, taking in information, trying to make sense of it, and then figuring out a way to respond appropriately, I think is going to help the situation immensely. And then shared goals. Working towards the same thing. I know that one sounds pretty easy, but a lot of times it's good to get into a room, sit with the group, especially the tactical group that you're working with specifically, and talk about not just the group goals, but individual goals. Like what does the vendor want or need to get out of the relationship, and what do the individuals on the hiring side need as well, both either from an internal perspective or from the individual project perspective. Are there things or experiences that people in the group want to get that they haven't had a chance to get before, and they were really looking forward to doing that one thing on this specific project, but now we brought a vendor in to do that? Well, if we share those goals, we can identify, hey, this guy came into this situation. He was really looking forward to digging into some visual design stuff because he hasn't had the opportunity to do that in the past. But now we just brought a vendor in whose expertise is in visual design. Well, rather than just cutting it off entirely and letting the vendor run with it, that's a great learning opportunity for that internal person to partner with that vendor and get their skills built up in a way that they may not have opportunity to do that internally. So it's good to think through that and not just think about the project goals, but individual goals as well in these spaces. And number 5, fears. Ask questions and be wrong and be okay with it and build each other up in that. Build a safe space for anybody in the team at any time to break down those barriers of fear and say, hey, here's an idea. I don't know if it's going to work, and it's okay if it doesn't work. We don't have to hit home runs every time we step up to the plate. It's good to just be able to step up to that plate at all, and we should be creating spaces in group work and in collaboration where that is always an opportunity for someone to do something. And then asking for help. I know we've mentioned this a couple of times, but in some ways, asking for help, again, level sets the truth of the situation and lets you operate out of who you really are. And it will also build credibility because people will begin to understand that you are being honest with them and that you're not just nodding your head whenever they say something and acting like you understand. Because the more that we do that, the more we will create ambiguity and distrust in groups because we don't know if people actually understand the thing that they're talking about or understand the thing that we're talking about. And so whenever someone can stop and say, wait, I don't necessarily understand this technical concept, or I don't understand this design strategy, now we have a chance to really build up the team, but then also we have a chance to build that sort of credibility and honesty amongst the group, which will create that sort of environment that you want when you're doing collaborative work for safe space. And then last is letting go. And for me, letting go means letting go of my own ego and the things that I'm trying to accomplish as an individual. Letting go of the need to be the superhero of the project who puts the whole thing on the superhero's back and tries to run and save the day with it. Personal ambition, letting go of preconceived ideas about a particular vendor. It's not lost on me that some organizations will have a great experience with a vendor, and other organizations may not have such a great experience with a vendor. And that happens for a variety of reasons. And so sometimes we get wind of those conversations about how people interacted in those past experiences. And we need to let go of those things because even for us right now in this room, this is the first time, maybe the only time, likely the only time, that this group of people right here will ever be in this room together to talk about this particular topic. It's never happened before. And it's probably never going to happen again, that we will have this makeup in this room. And the same thing goes for projects. Most of the time, you're not going to have the same exact group of people, particularly in client-vendor relationship. That's not going to be a persistent thing that goes on and on over time. You're going to be solving different problems. You're probably serving different people. and it will be different people on the project. So like, let go of the stress that you can create in those situations by just identifying that, hey, this is a moment in time, and these are the people here, and we're going to make the best of the situation that we can. And then my final point on that topic is something that I know my Westfield people would get tired of hearing. They're probably going to laugh a little bit, but it's progress over perfect. It's something that I live and die by. Because I love talking taxonomy. I love creating beautiful deliverables. I love to draw on whiteboards. But none of that matters if I'm hurting people in the process of creating the perfect thing. Okay? So we shift our focus from trying to attain perfection into trying to build progress inside organizations. And whenever in the client-vendor relationship we can focus on that, it can shift the tone of the conversation and give us something tangible that we can look towards. And when I say perfect, I don't mean don't do great, amazing work. I don't mean like settle for something that you shouldn't be settling for. What I mean is perfect is a static and unchanging state that really isn't attainable in the universe. We live in a constantly moving world, literally. It's spinning 1,000 miles an hour, 66,000 miles an hour around the sun, 1.3 million miles an hour hurling through the universe in our galaxy. Like, we are never in the same space at the same time ever. We are constantly moving. And so to try to work towards this idea of perfection is just fallible from the very beginning. It doesn't actually exist in our universe. So if we can focus on small incremental change, rather than trying to attain the perfect process or the perfect deliverable or the perfect whatever, then we can actually rally around those small incremental steps together, get wins under our belts as a group, and now we're starting to form a sense of identity as a group with those experiences. But if all we have is just one like big shot at the right thing, and we take a big swing and we miss, well, then we failed as a group. Okay? So that's why we should shift our focus from perfect down to progress. Okay, and with that, so when my 7-year-old started going to school a few years ago, my wife and I were dropping him off, and we really didn't talk about it at the time, so it wasn't something that was particularly cerebral. But we were both just trying to encourage him as he went off to school. And my wife blurted something out, and then I blurted something out right after her, and it's a couple of phrases that sort of stuck with us over time, and now we say it to him every day when he goes to school. They say it to me every day when I leave for work. And for me, it rings true in these situations, and it's just about humanizing people, remembering that we're all here because we want to do good things together, and that we're capable of accomplishing those things. And that phrase, for me, is work hard and be a good friend. And if we can keep those things in mind, that yes, we're here to work hard, we are here to do good things together. We're here to take that 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day in this and make something good for the world. Great, that's awesome. But we also need to be a good friend to each other and be mindful of other people in the process, and not just talk about empathy for customer, but we need to also focus on empathy for each other whenever we're doing this work. So sorry we didn't have the slides up here today, you guys. My contact information will be all over the website and stuff, so you guys will have that later. I know I flew through that pretty quickly, but that's what I have for you today. So thanks for hanging out.
Can I add one point?
Yeah.
On your last bit there about the empathy for others.
Yeah.
Patience. I would also stress to have that for yourself.
Yes.
I think a lot of this friction that happens between entities is a lot of self-induced self-talk of that.
Yeah, and that's why I come back to, like, I have something to offer, and I have something to learn. You know, I have something to contribute here to the organizations of conversation. And I even encourage you guys to do that with whoever you're working with, whether they are a peer in your profession or whether they're someone on the business side of things. You know, a designer working with a non-designer. Well, anybody can get up to a whiteboard and draw boxes and triangles and circles, right? So co-creation for me is a big path to achieving that and pulling that out of people and helping sort of level set that, hey, we're all here and we all have value. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually do remember that meeting really very well. I think it was probably, 2008, 2009?
Yeah.
About that time
Yeah.
period. And I think one of the things, I've thought about it many times since then, a lot of meetings. One of the things I think is really interesting as I kind of reflect on that meeting and my time in the meeting is, it's got to be really tough as a vendor, again, think about the interest. It's got to be really tough as a vendor. I'm not sure how much of this you picked up in that room, but it's got to be really tough to walk into an organization, a large organization like that, as an outsider, not necessarily knowing what the internal politics are. And I can tell you, I'll share now, almost 10 years later, there were an awful lot of internal politicking happening that probably limited some of the progress that could have been made over the last 9 years, because it's been recorded. So just wanted to share that with you. I mean, I do remember the meeting very well. It's just an interesting thing that you remembered also.
Yeah,
like I said, it's got to be tough, again, to walk into a situation you don't know.
Well, I think it's tough on both sides. I think it's tough to walk in and try to understand what's happening internally politically, whether it's good or bad. I also think it's tough to be on the other side as the client and have internal politics happening and not be able to, and feel like you can't surface those things or talk about the real things that are happening at the organization. And for me, when that creeps up on either side, people tense up and stress up and get super reactive really quickly. And if we can just breathe and remember that, and I love my company. I'm super happy to be at Westfield. It's just an insurance agency website. We're not building nuclear rockets here. People's lives aren't at stake. I'm more concerned that, my friend who had a rough day and got the verbal crap beat out of him in a meeting or tore apart, he put all this work into this report that he's done. How's he going to react with his family when he gets home? Whenever he's been dealing with, a barrage of stuff all day long, we're better than that, and we're capable of that. And what we can't do is promote this idea of end customer empathy and bypass the people who are sitting next to us on a daily basis. It just doesn't make sense. And we can never be organizations built from empathy if we can't empathize with each other inside the organization. It's just false. It's just not going to happen.
To add on to Ben's point, how if you brought in as a consultant or an agency and you perhaps notice there might be some friction from the client towards the agency, how do you go about solving for that?
So I think the first thing you always do is pause. Because I know for me, being a reactive person, my thing is as soon as I land on that right answer, as soon as I have the mental model figured out, I'm okay, now it's time to go take action on it. I got to go get something done for it. And for me, my old response would have been, okay, I know the person that I'm working with directly can't handle it. I need to go 2 levels above and talk to them and let them know what's actually going on. Here are the problems you actually need to solve. My advice in those situations are continue talking to the person that you're talking to. Make it known to them the things that you're seeing in the place. Most of the time, they're going to agree with you. Most of the time, they're going to smile a little bit and maybe even laugh a little bit and be yep, that's the reality of the situation. And then they even say, and there's nothing I can do about it right now. And that's your opportunity to say, hey, well, why don't we go have some conversations with somebody else here and maybe see if it makes sense to change the trajectory of the project. And I think whenever we make it a lead conversation and get it out of back channel conversations and get it out of non-transparent situations, then I think everybody feels like they're part of the process, and that can reduce any anxiety that people have about things. Yeah.
I love a lot of the stuff that you said today. I'm one of very few people who own an agency or actually in an agency on that other side of the fence. What I will tell you, first and foremost, for us, is if you quit calling us a vendor and treat us like a partner. That's all we want. We're here to help, just like you said.
Yeah.
So if you think of us as a partner, and if you're all-inclusive, as you also mentioned, allow us to come in and be a part of you, an extension of you. We're not trying to take your job. You hired us for a reason. We're the experts of what we do. Allow us to do our job. Let's work together.
Yeah.
That makes it easy. But when you say the V word that I'm running, and that tells me it's just a paycheck, and that's not what I signed up
for. And it's dehumanizing to you, right? Like
Right.
you're no longer a person.
And there are some companies, agencies that operate like that. It is just a paycheck and it's a revolving door and it's in and out.
Mhm.
That's not how we work. But I love, you said a lot of good points. And I think if these people take that to heart and just think of us as a partner and don't call us a vendor, we'll be much better off and get a lot more done.
Well, think about what we do whenever we have someone come over to our house to help us out on a project. Like I come from a small town. Whenever someone comes over to help me put on, a roof on my dad's house, we feed them, we take care of them, and it's not this like, oh, we're gonna buy you lunch because that's what we're supposed to do for vendors thing. It's no, we legitimately want you to feel cared for because you came to help us out with this thing. So I think establishing that on the client side is a good thing. On the other hand, as a vendor, like I'm not gonna go to help my buddy put a roof on his dad's house and walk over and start telling him all the wrong choices he's making about the roof that he's putting on his dad's house. Either, he asked me to come in for a specific purpose and said, hey, I have all these shingles I gotta lay down. Can you just help me lay these shingles down? Yes, I can help you lay those shingles down. You might want to think about this repair that we've done over here, but we can definitely lay these shingles down. I just think it takes taking a step back sometimes and really thinking through the context of the situation. Yeah.
Do you find yourself getting into a situation where you mediate between, the partner coming in and your own folks? Like seeing both sides and helping each side see the other side?
Yeah. So I've been in a couple of interesting mediation situations. The most interesting for me is when I've had to mediate as a vendor to an organization, having to mediate between two people because I feel like they've already decided that they're not going to listen to each other. They're going to speak at each other and not listen to each other and try to hear each other. And being able to come in and say, hey, I'm hearing you say this, I'm hearing you say this. I think what you both mean are these things. And trying to establish that sort of common language and space where people can step back and hear each other. So that's been one for me. On the other side, on the client side, I think trying to translate perceived goals of a project into actual goals or achievable goals of a project, those are the things that I've tried to focus on in translation. We have, as organizations, big aspirations for what we want to do or what we want to become or how we want to be perceived by the world. Sometimes that goal is set way down the road, and the mental model, like the vision is there. But what's lacking are the actual individual steps of achieving that vision. And so sometimes we will have the leadership of an organization say, hey, we're going to do all this new amazing stuff, blah, 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 blah. And then they're like, and here, go figure it out. And then they just hand it off to everybody with no clear direction on, okay, what permission do we actually have or what authority do we have to make decisions to achieve the kinds of things that you're talking about? Because to create this type of organization looks a lot different from how we actually are in reality. And so sometimes just being able to help create common language between a vendor who wants to come in and serve the organization and leadership in an organization who wants something that isn't actually achievable in the next 9 to 18 months. Starting to identify real goals that map to the long-term vision, but create actionable things that you can do right now. That's where I found some happy space in these kinds of situations. Yeah.
I come from a situation where there's politics and working with, so it's not a partner, not say a partner, trying to deal with the politics of that ego, trying to be the superhero. So I definitely ask a lot of questions. I don't just nod, but like any suggestions on that type of.
So you're dealing with a superhero, or you have been a superhero?
No, I'm dealing with like always wanting to be the person with the answers and doing what they want to do.
Yeah.
But when I know, we probably need to ask more questions, get more collaborative ideas and thinking. So I push that, but I guess any suggestions or internally in-house how to deal with that?
Do whatever you can to surface people who typically aren't seen as capable of doing a particular task, contributing to the task. I use the example of designing on a whiteboard. As UI designers, we're supposed to create these beautiful pixel-perfect things that we shove out into the world. And in the world of UX in general, we come back with all of these workflows and these interactions and all of these other things. And a lot of times we're sent away in a hole to do those things, and we're supposed to bring back the shiny deliverable. Well, most of the time, the people in the business relationships don't really understand how those things got made. They like what they see, but they don't feel like they can actually participate in that because it seems so foreign to them. Like you're using tools that they don't have. You're using, some ideas or thoughts that they may not have had access to in their education. But when you pull people into the process and you become more of a facilitator and less of the actual person who's tasked with execution, I think the whole organization wins. I don't think it's good for any organization or any part of an organization to hold up a particular skill set and keep it at bay from the rest of the organization. I think co-creation is what really makes organizations thrive and really empowers people to find out who they are and what they have to contribute to a conversation. So I would say wherever you can identify small spaces for co-creation in the process, jump all over it and continue to try to surface those things. Yeah, good, okay. That's time, guys. Thank you, appreciate it.
Turn projector on.
Yep, right here. This is fancy stuff you got here, so.